If you're on my Legacy of Survival channel, you're here because you take history seriously, and you want lessons that actually matter today. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss the kind of deep, practical knowledge that used to be guarded behind military doors. What follows isn't romanticized, sanitized, or padded with dramatic nonsense. These are 7 real World War II survival tricks so effective that soldiers were ordered to keep them quiet, and every one of them still has value for modern preparedness. The first trick worth discussing is how soldiers learned to turn terrain into an invisible shield. World War II units, operating across Europe and the Pacific, understood that concealment was rarely about finding the perfect hiding spot. It was about breaking the enemy's visual pattern recognition. Troops were trained to use scrub brush, rubble, shadows, and uneven terrain to distort outlines and absorb movement. This wasn't about camouflage uniforms. It was about manipulating the environment itself. Today, the principle applies to anyone wanting to move undetected or stay unnoticed in hostile conditions. Walking along ridgelines, open fields, or clean paths draws attention. Keeping low, moving irregularly, and staying inside existing visual noise, tree lines, debris, dark corners, remains one of the most effective ways to avoid being spotted. Another powerful lesson came from how soldiers navigated without compasses when equipment was lost, damaged, or confiscated. Before GPS existed, troops were taught natural direction-finding techniques that could keep them oriented in unfamiliar territory. They studied the shape of tree growth, prevailing wind patterns, the arc of the sun, and even the way snow melted on certain slopes. These weren't folk tales. They were tested field methods relied upon during retreats, escapes, and night movements. Anyone practicing modern survival can, train the same skill by learning the dominant weather patterns of their region, tracking the local sun path throughout the year, and practicing short-distance handrail navigation by using rivers, roads, or ridgelines as guides. During some of the harshest winters of the Second World War, one of the most closely guarded techniques involved creating heat with almost no fuel. Soldiers trapped in freezing conditions learned to build micro-heating systems inside dugouts using stones, narrow vents, and insulating soil. A tiny ember, controlled and funneled correctly, could warm a small enclosed space long enough to keep frostbite at bay. They also discovered how much heat a human body produces when space is minimized. This is, in fact, why foxholes were intentionally small. Applying this today doesn't require wartime conditions. Anyone living in a cold region should know how to insulate a small emergency shelter using earth, debris, or even layered clothing and tarps to trap radiant heat. The principle is simple. Really, conserve the warmth you already have. One of the more surprising survival tricks actually came from the Pacific Theatre, where, believe it or not, disease killed more soldiers than direct combat. Units learned to identify water sources by observing wildlife movement patterns. Certain birds and insects, reliably pointed toward fresh water, while stagnant, disease-prone pools had these distinct ecological signs: different plant clusters, surface scum, and, the absence of flowing ripples. Soldiers were taught to watch animals drink, not merely gather around water. That distinction, more often than not, meant the difference between hydration and severe illness. Today's application is, honestly, quite straightforward. Study the wildlife of your region and learn what species are indicators of reliable water. This doesn't replace filtering and purification, which every prepared individual should do, but it does give you a powerful edge when you need to locate water under pressure. Another tactic that was, well, intentionally kept quiet was the use of controlled silence as a communication tool. Modern audiences tend to think of hand signals as the main silent method, but World War II units developed entire silent patterns of movement and spacing that allowed men to communicate intent, warnings or direction changes without gesture or sound. The spacing itself communicated readiness, tension or caution. This is still one of the best ways to coordinate small groups in environments where noise discipline matters. If you train with others, practice silent group movement using predetermined spacing rules for travel, caution and awareness. It takes time to learn, but once you internalize it, you can move as a team without constant verbal cues. Ration stretching might not sound glamorous, but the techniques soldiers used were effective enough that armies didn't want them widely known. Troops combined small amounts of fat, starch and water to create calorie-dense field pastes that lasted longer than the official ration kits. They also learned to strategically alternate calorie intake, eating small amounts during exertion and larger amounts only when resting, to reduce total consumption without losing energy. This isn't starvation, it's energy budgeting. Anyone planning for emergencies should, practice creating calorie-dense mixes from shelf-stable ingredients and learn how their own energy levels change based on timing, not just quantity of food intake. The final trick worth discussing is how soldiers used morale as a survival tool, not a luxury. Commanders quickly realized that a unit with even one shared routine, cleaning weapons together at dusk, boiling water at the same hour, reviewing maps each morning, survived longer. Predictable micro-routines stabilized the mind during chaos. This is a skill every modern survivalist needs to master. In a crisis, even a 30-second ritual repeated daily can anchor your thinking and reduce panic. It's not psychology jargon. It's learned discipline. These 7 World War II survival tactics were kept quiet for good reason. They worked then and they work now. If you want more historically grounded survival insight, make sure you subscribe, share this guide with other serious history enthusiasts, and help keep this knowledge alive for those who actually value it.